Hey, I'm Carrie. And I'm Karen. Welcome to Aletheia Speaks podcast, where we speak the truth that sets you free. And can you believe we've made it through our first month of podcasting?
Podcast number 4. And we're going to be talking about boundaries today. And as you know, God himself is the one who first established boundaries. He set up boundaries when he established the seas and created the seas so that he can put two different seas in the very same oceans butting up against each other.
If you
And they won't.
that, you should Google it. It's
Cool. It really
The seas don't mix, even that the water's right next to each other.
And you can tell that they're different seas.
Yeah.
And it really is interesting to look at that.
I mean, the other part of that is if God hadn't commanded the sea to go no further, we wouldn't have any land.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
the earth was originally covered
In water.
Mm-hmm. And so if you don't give a boundary to something,
Right.
you'll be overwhelmed.
Now, I mean, people set boundaries all the time because if you didn't, you wouldn't have any financial savings. You wouldn't have. Well, this is true. And you really need this podcast if that shit.
I mean, I will be honest. When we got married, we had, I think, $87,000 worth of debt because nobody sat us down. Well, part of it is because we didn't want to be sat down, right, and talked to about it. But part of it was just a kind of an ignorance issue.
Sure.
On my husband's side, his parents are very affluent and kind of gave him a credit card. So when I got married, I'm like, you got a 27.5% interest rate on your card? Well, no. I was like, we're not doing this. But again, it's just an ignorance issue, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of times people, they don't know that there should be a boundary there.
Yeah.
They don't know that it can look different than how it looks.
Right.
Then. So let's talk about some of those.
Right. So, I mean, people, like, one of the things we're seeing now is sort of this explosion of teenagers and telephones and a lack of boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're seeing kind of an explosion of no boundaries on sexual behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so the need for boundaries and teaching on boundaries is really great. But I've never seen a sermon on boundaries. I've never seen a book on boundaries.
There's a book on one. I think Lisa Turkhurst wrote one. And then I believe I haven't read them. And I just saw the other day, a friend mentioned there's one by, I think, Henry Cloud. I don't even know if they're good. But I know that there's been some stuff put out there, but I think primarily, from the pulpit in a typical church setting, we don't hear a lot about boundaries, and boundaries are biblical.
Right.
Jesus used them.
Right.
They're super important. I mean, how many times did he walk away from the multitude?
Oh, right.
He wasn't like,
well, and setting boundaries with the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
Yes.
He set boundaries.
They did not get to follow him.
No.
I mean, they could have, but then he's like, are you going to leave too?
Well, even in his speech, he said boundaries, you brood of vipers. Like, there's a verbal boundary.
Exactly.
I'm setting a boundary here. No, you can't talk to me that way.
You're
not following me.
That's exactly what I wanted to hit at.
Yeah.
No, you're not allowed to talk to me in that way.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Another biblical example of a boundary is when Adam and Eve were in the garden.
Yes.
And
the trees.
There's 2 trees.
Mm-hmm.
And God said, hey, this one you can't eat of, but every other tree you can.
Right.
And when they went and ate of the tree that they weren't supposed to, there was a consequence.
Yes.
And so many people miss this. They miss the fact that there should be a consequence, that there will be a consequence.
And God is going to follow through with the consequence. He didn't just say, oh,
that's okay.
Right. Too bad you didn't do what I asked you to do. Next time, though, if you do it the next time, the next time you're going to get kicked out of the garden.
What did that teach people to do?
Just do it again.
Do it again, because I'll get mercy again. That's actually not mercy.
Right.
That's not. No, sometimes the best thing that you can do is to keep that boundary set up, because you're teaching them. We teach people all the time how to treat us.
Well, as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that I love to help people understand when they don't understand, why are my kids acting this way? Why is my husband acting this way? All right, let's sit back and see, what are you teaching your children about yourself? What are you teaching your husband about yourself? Rather than focusing on their behavior, let's focus on your behavior.
Mhm.
What are you teaching them about you?
Mhm.
Let's not worry about them.
Mhm.
What are you teaching them about you and your behavior?
Well, I think kids in particular, they love testing the boundaries, because boundaries for kids means love.
Well, security.
It's
Well,
secure.
can you separate love and security?
I don't think so.
No, they're the same. Well, they're two sides of one coin.
Coin.
Yes.
So kids, they'll often test that boundary. Is it still there?
Right. It's important for them.
Yes.
They are grounded, knowing, oh, that's such a relief. Now I know how far I can go. I'm so glad to know that the boundary has not moved.
Yes.
Because if the boundary has moved, I have to keep testing.
And there's a sense of instability.
Yes, because I'm not confident until I know where my boundary line is.
Yeah. So if the boundary line is constantly moved of where the rule is,
yes,
sometimes, yes, you can do this. Sometimes no. Sometimes this is our rule, but today, I guess not.
Then I have to keep testing. I have to keep let me rephrase this. I have to keep misbehaving until I know for sure where that boundary line is, because only then am I confident about what the rules are.
And I think it's so in our home, this is what we've decided was, as a family, we've studied First Corinthians 13, love. And every night we're doing these declarations on what love is.
Well, wait, can I stop you?
Yeah.
Not everybody out there might know what a declaration is. So I think I need to define.
So declaration is just taking a scripture and turning it into a sentence that is pertinent to you. So for example, what we're doing right now is the verse says, love is patient, love is kind. And so our declarations are, I am patient, I am kind. And so what we're constantly doing is reinforcing that the standard of our home is the standard of scripture. And during the day, if I hear the two of them being unkind, or if I'm unkind to my husband or my husband's unkind to me, it gives us permission to stop at that very moment and say, wait a minute, the standard of our home is kindness. We've fallen below the standard. And rather than come down a level, let's go back up to where we're supposed to be, because forgiveness, like we talked about last week, forgiveness restores that standard. So if you've done some mistakes, are no problem. It's okay to make a mistake. Mistakes are totally fine. If the kid spills the milk, don't be angry at them. Don't do that. It's just a mistake. You can smile and clean it up and help them clean up the mess, right? Where was I going with that?
Restoring the standard.
Okay.
Restoring the standard.
So,
and so just if you don't remember, go back to our last podcast or two where we've talked about how important it is to hold up that standard.
Right.
Because holding up the standard is the most critical issue for you maintaining your family that there is.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when there's an apology, hey, I'm so sorry I did that. What it does is bring that standard of the home back up to kindness. And so, if the kiddos are, if they sin, not when they sin, if there's a squabble, I come in, hey, what's the standard? Both of them already know kindness. Was what you did kind? Well, she doesn't care. No, was it kind? And when they admit, no, it wasn't kind, okay, then there needs to be an apology. So when you have the standard set up there's no question if an apology needs to be made or not.
Right.
Yes, an apology needs to be made. So
I love that. Yeah, that's so important. And using scripture as your declaration, I'm so in agreement with, rather than just making up something that isn't based on something that's scriptural.
Right.
That's so important. I'm so in agreement with
that. So those are the boundary lines that we make to keep our family safe. Because if you fall outside the boundary line of scripture, it's not safe out there.
Right.
You're going to get really hurt. If you allow language in your home like you're a jerk or
you're stupid,
or you're stupid.
or I hate you.
Any of those words are not acceptable. The boundary line is we don't talk like that. This is the standard of our home. And so many different, I mean, even for me, growing up one of 4 kids, a lot of things my brothers and sisters said to me growing up that were just jerk moves. And they were never around our parents.
Right. Of course, they would not say them around your parents because they wouldn't, that wouldn't fly.
But I think the more important thing that I'm learning to try to do with my kids, I don't know perfectly, but I try to teach them why.
Mm-hmm.
Why would it be a wrong thing or a bad thing to say you're stupid to your sister? Because if you can get them to understand the why behind it, then you have them their buy-in for it. Okay, so what may be another boundary line? You get, or for example, my kiddos with technology, TV, they get 1 hour of TV a day. Okay, why? Well, the boundary line is set that way because I understand that you become what you behold. And I don't mind having a little TV in there it's very we keep it clean here. But too much of anything, their brains are going to start to be transformed into the images they see on TV. I don't want them conformed into that image. And so when I can explain to them why the boundary line is there, guess what? I actually don't have any fights about that in my home. And it's very countercultural because most people have the TV on, I think, pretty much if they're home. Right. So that's just an example of a boundary line.
I love that. And then as your kids get older, even teaching them how to create boundary lines themselves, right, so that as they become adults, they understand. Because I think we've talked pretty kind of simple things, but I think that as you get older, where it becomes more difficult is setting boundaries around relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Because setting them around how you will allow people to treat you is more difficult. I'm not going to allow this type of a behavior in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to allow you to treat me this way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to allow this in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm raising the standard of what I'm going to allow in a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have these kinds of friends any longer.
Yes. I've had to cut off friendships that were very manipulative. As soon as I begin to feel manipulation in a relationship, I just say, you know what? This isn't something that is adding to my life right now. And I wish you the best. I love you, but here's my boundary. If you need me, you can text me. I will pray for you. Unconditional friendship was never commanded in Scripture. We are commanded to love, but we are not commanded to relationship. So there are people out there, or Christians out there, that are manipulative, that are abusive, that are dangerous even for you.
Right.
And you're not commanded to have to be in any sort of relationship. You have the freedom to be with people that lift you up, that encourage you.
And you should be.
Yes.
Now, where this gets tricky is when you're related to them.
It does get tricky.
As a matter of fact, when I was talking about the people that I was rejected by, I mean, one was a mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, that's difficult.
You have to go to family gatherings.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are very difficult situations. And even in that situation, we had to put up a boundary line.
Mm-hmm.
Where we didn't go and attend every situation, or we went later in the day, we came home earlier. We didn't go for the whole time of things.
Mm-hmm. Or your dad stayed by you.
Yeah.
Conversation. So that if there was an attack, he could be there to support you.
Yes, absolutely. And that changed. That was a dramatic change from when my husband would say, well, Karen, can't you change and be more like my mom wants you to be?
Which would be an example of, we talked about the heart throne. You don't have to change. I mean, obviously, you're not going to do something or malicious or something like that.
Right.
I'm just talking about like a normal relationship where you're literally just trying to get along.
Yeah. But from when we began, where my husband literally wanted me to change my personality to please my mother-in-law,
right,
which actually led to my depression.
Yeah.
Because the expectation was be who my mother wants you to be.
Right.
And people make this mistake in relationships all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They try to be who somebody else wants you to be, and you can't do that.
Absolutely not.
We had a situation when our kids were in their 20s where all four of our kids wanted us to be something completely different. And I sat my husband down and I said, honey, we cannot be four different people to all four of our different kids. We cannot change our personalities and our belief systems to be who all four of our different kids want us to be. And he then had an aha moment. Oh, you're right. We can't. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
We literally can't change our belief systems and our personalities to meet what they need.
So I want to talk about this because I think some people don't have a paradigm for this. It is worth waiting for a good friend rather than to be friends with a bad friend.
Who wants you to, really what they want you to do is be a duplicate of them.
Yes.
They want you to agree with what they believe.
Yes.
Do the things that they like doing. And basically be their yes person.
Right.
Just agree with what they want.
And what you'll start to notice if you're in a type of relationship like that is you'll start to feel like you're having an identity crisis.
You'll be confused.
You feel like you don't have any value.
Right. You'll feel unloved.
You feel like you can't add anything to the conversation.
Of value.
Right. And then you just end up feeling, why am I here?
Yeah.
But a lot of people stay in friendships like that because
it's all they have.
That's all they have.
Right.
And this is what I want to say.
Well, I will say that this other person will tell them how much they love them.
Yes.
They'll shower them with gifts.
Yes.
They will do things because they don't want to lose their mini me.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
And all of that is a manipulation.
Yes. But they'll do everything to keep you right where you're at.
That's that manipulative spirit I was talking about earlier that tries to play on your emotions to get you to stay.
Right.
When you know it's an unhealthy relationship and it needs a boundary line and to be cut off.
Yeah.
Because it's actually destroying the life source from you.
Yeah. It's sucking the life out of you because it's literally destroying your identity.
Yes. So what I really want to say is, I'm going to use my friend Daniela as an example. Daniela really wanted a friend that loved the Lord. And her whole high school and college life, she had friends, but it wasn't what she wanted. And so one day she sat down before the Lord and she wrote down, I think she said like 15 things that she wanted in a friend, in a best friend. And then she said, and then I waited and I prayed and I waited and I prayed and I waited. And then all of a sudden, when her son was 4 and my daughter was 4, we find each other lined up at a Little Lamb's little preschool, and we have been the best of friends. And if you ask her, she will say, I am so glad I waited for you. Almost like in a marriage sense, because covenant friendships are like that.
Mm-hmm.
You match together. And if you cleave yourself to somebody else, and you say, I'm going to choose to be in friendship with you, you may miss on the one that the Lord has for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And because you're unwilling to wait, or you just settle for whatever's convenient, or you settle for whatever's there, instead of being like, Lord, I want your best because you've made me perfectly. I know you have a best friend for me. The way that I look at it is you've got to model everything based on Jesus' life, right? He had John the Beloved that leaned on his breast.
Right.
Then he had Peter and James and John that were his close 3. And then he had 12. So we have this model of friendship where we know, and obviously Judas was in there, but Judas was not in the inner circle.
Right.
Judas was not leaning on his chest.
Right.
I don't believe he ever would have betrayed him if he was. But all that to say, I just want to encourage you, if you're looking for a friend and you're tolerating a codependent or a manipulative friendship, that you don't have to stay in that relationship.
Right. And you basically can just kind of start weaning them out. Don't answer the text right away. Wait 2 days before you return a text. Just start distancing yourself from unhealthy relationships until you finally just sort of wean out of them. You don't need to have people who are telling you what to think, what to wear, how to do your hair, people that are not encouraging you to be what God called you to do and be. Your friends should be supporting you. They should be calling you into your ministry. They should be telling you what you're doing well. There should be no discouraging words. So, I mean, if you're having people that are calling you downward, disparaging, these are not the people that you should be with.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need more help with that, you can always just message us here at Aletheia Attorney and Development. We do offer in-person coaching and things that we can help you out with that. So
if you're in a manipulative friendships or you need help untangling from difficult relationships, particularly family relationships, we can help you with that. So please don't hesitate to give us a call.
all right. It was so good having you. We'll see you next week.
Bye.